he knows what that is. Only 2% of the lawyers in the country are members of this elite group. They're nominated by their peers. And I'm in the Hall of Fame, Jewish Hall of Fame, boxing. And a couple of years ago, I said to my wife, I said, I'm not done yet. I said, I got to make another comeback. I said, I always wanted to be a cop. I think I'm going to be a cop. And she said, oh, you're too old. So, I'm a Jewish cop. Sergeant. So I did that. And, but getting back to my book, when I wrote the book, I didn't expect to sell books. I didn't write it to sell books. But my book took off. I wrote that book for myself because I thought it was an unusual story. I grew up with such extraordinary people. I made a comeback. I wrote it for my son. And my father was one of 9 children. They're all gone now except for one. I got a 93-year-old aunt. I thought, you know, it would make my aunt happy. I'd give her a copy. Well, the book took off. I've sold a lot of books. I've been on TV. But the biggest thrill for me is going to be tomorrow because I was invited to speak at the high school that I was thrown out of. The principal invited me, and I'm going to be there, and I am going to talk to the kids. And now I'm very successful, and I have money, and I want to pass something on. And what I'm going to pass on to them is this. I am no different than they are. I have an average IQ. I'm a regular guy. And if they want to have what I have, all they have to do is have tenacity and drive and work hard. So that's going to be a big thrill for me. Let me tell you a little bit more about how I grew up. The anti-Semitism, one thing I remember, you know, the stuff stays with you. How many people here have experienced anti-Semitism? No, I'm not alone. I remember one time I'm having an argument with this neighbor named Genu. I must have been 11 years old. And it was over something trivial. And his father pulled into the alley after work in his '39 black Ford, and he's carrying a lunch pail, and he's caucusing with Genu. And the next thing I know, he walks up to me and he slaps me in the face and says, Jew. This guy's still on my list. I'm looking for him. Yeah. I'm trying to find him through the internet. If he's 100 years old, he's still going down. The boxing, every Jewish man that I knew in my neighborhood loved boxing. When Joe Louis lost to Marciano, the Jews cried like they did when Roosevelt died. It was a very sad day. So I was a single parent and I raised my son by myself. And one day we're at the gym and my son said, Daddy, I want to learn how to box. He must have been 8 years old. I think he was the victim of a bully. And just as he said that, I noticed that the manager of the gym was banging the heavy bag. And for those of you who know a little bit about boxing, it takes a lot of skill to bang the heavy bag properly. So I walked up to the manager and I said, my boy wants to learn how to box. Do you know where I can take him? And he said, you got lucky. There's an old Jewish man 2 blocks away above a tattoo parlor. This is in Los Angeles. He said, he was a champion. So that day, after court, I picked my son up at the Jewish daycare, and I took him to the gym. It was right out of Rocky. We walked up the stairs. It smelled of urine, and I met the owner, a wonderful guy, Frankie Goodman. Frankie Goodman was from Philadelphia, and he had 2 bachelor's degrees from Penn State. Very extraordinary for those days. And what he did is he taught kids how to box by drilling a hole in the ring, and he got down in that hole, and he was the size of the kids. It was a beautiful thing to watch. This was one tough Jewish guy. And he would tell the kids, step in, step out, move to the left, keep your hands up at all times. And he would drill them. And my son was getting real good. And I said, you know, I'm a street fighter, but I didn't know all this stuff. I'm going to learn. So I started going. And I would spar with an FBI man. And Frankie and I loved him. We bonded very close. Eventually he died. So I was looking for another gym. And a friend of mine who was an actor said, Ken, I got a buddy. He knew I didn't go to movies. I wrote up movies long ago when I decided to make something in my life. He said, I got a friend who's a movie star, and he owns a boxing gym, and I told him about you. And he said, bring him over. So I went that night, and this guy was Mickey Rourke, the movie star. So he told me, I came to the gym, he wouldn't take my money. And I would go twice a week. We became friendly. He was very kind to me. And from that, I met a lot of boxers, and I have sparred with many world champions. I have represented boxers for 30 years. I never charged a boxer. I kept a lot of them out of jail. I've represented trainers. As a result, I became the legal advisor for the California Boxing Hall of Fame, legal advisor for the World Boxing Hall of Fame, legal advisor for the California Professional Boxing Referees. I was on the board of directors of the Los Angeles Police Department Boxing Clinic. I love boxing, and I still box. So when I go up to the boxing gym, I climb the stairs. Have any of you ever heard of Freddie Roach, the great trainer? He was my trainer. He trains Manny Pacquiao. He trained Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya. He was my first trainer. And so when I climb the stairs, I hear a boxer say, here comes Ken Green. He kept me out of the joint. If you're in a jam, who do you call Ken Green? There were characters on Division Street. The most famous or infamous was Nate's Barbershop. Does anyone remember that? He was my uncle. He owned a barbershop on Division Street just east of California. And men would play cards in the back. In those days, it was illegal to play cards for money. If you went in the back room, here's who you would see. Off-duty cops, wise guys, and they all got along and they were playing cards. Nate ended up becoming the chief of the clerks of Cook County. He couldn't read, he couldn't write. So if you got a ticket, you went to Nate and you gave him the money and he smeared the judge. That's how it worked. When I started driving a car at 16, my father handed me a deuce. You remember those? My father was a gambler. A $2 bill. He said, you wrap this around your driver's license. I said, why? He said, do what I tell you. And he said, if a police officer stops you, when you take out the license, make sure the deuce is wrapped around it. Within a week, I got stopped. I did nothing wrong. I said, yes, officer, what did I do wrong? He said, just shut up. I said, okay. He said, show me your license. So I handed him the license with the deuce. He said, go home. That's how it worked.